It's been 3 years since Metal Gear Solid 2 was released on the PlayStation 2 and blew everybody's mind. That game was just crazy. And now Metal Gear Solid 3 is just days away, and I've fortunately had a chance to start playing a finished version of it, and I'm here to bring you some impressions both of the gameplay and of the story. If you don't want to know anything about the story part, then tune out after the gameplay portion, because I'm going to go into some of the early specifics, basically just some minor spoilers about what the setup really is and basically sort of what the game is about, but all bets are off when it comes to Metal Gear Solid. I know this, you know this. So let's proceed. The game, of course, is a prequel. It takes place before the near future settings of the previous Metal Gear Solids. This one supposedly takes place in the 60s during the Cold War, and you play as Snake, and you get to stalk through the jungle and do weird stuff like eat snakes, and eat fish, and eat rabbits, and eat goats, and eat all kinds of other stuff. Actually, the eating doesn't play that big of a role in the game. You could carry tons and tons of food in your backpack, and you use food to replenish your stamina meter, which is a new thing. It doesn't really factor that heavily into gameplay because it's easy to keep your stamina pretty much maxed out and knife the occasional bunny or something like that to keep your food supply looking good. But if you do let your stamina dwindle, you start to see like your vision fade a little bit and your shooting arm starts to grow unsteady. But this doesn't turn out to be a major component of the gameplay, which is a lot like Metal Gear Solid 2 for the most part. One of the other new twists is Snake's ability to cure himself should he suffer some heinous injuries, such as bullet wounds or leeches or burns or fractures or all kinds of other nasty things like that. That sounds real bad, but again, much like the eating, it turns out to be pretty abstract. You just sort of go into a menu and use some healing items like bandages and like a sewing kit and disinfectant and things like that, and then you hear like the nice 8-bit sounding like you ate a ration sound, and it's all good. You could do this right in the middle of battle, so if someone fractures your ribs in the middle of a fight, just hit start, go to the cure menu, and you're all set. Again, it's just not really that big of an element of play, but like the eating, it helps to establish sort of the jungle setting of MGS3 and make you feel more like a survivalist. It goes for that Rambo First Blood type of thing. The other new thing is close quarters combat. Snake now fights with a gun and with a knife. His historic dislike of bladed weapons is nowhere to be found here, and perhaps the game will explain why that is. With a knife, he can slit people's throats or basically hold them hostage. The whole system really isn't all that different from like the sneak up system in MGS2, but the stealth in general is a lot different here since you have camouflage to worry about and no radar. So instead you've got this camouflage index. Basically you could put on different uniforms and different face paint, which again you could switch at any point just by accessing the start menu, and this makes you blend in more with your surroundings. You get a little percentage indicator telling you how well you're doing it, and that makes it more difficult for enemies to spot you. If they do spot you, it's not that bad because you could sustain actually a whole lot of damage before you die, at least on the normal difficulty. The game seems actually a bit easier to me than MGS2 did. I've been dying a lot less early on. Though granted, that's partly because there's just tons and tons of story once again. During the first several hours of gameplay, or during the first several hours of the game, I should say, you spend a lot of it just watching really beautifully choreographed cutscenes and listening to dialogue between Snake and his commanding officers and other characters. Let me tell you some more about the plot, so get the heck out of here if you don't want to hear it. Basically, the game is set in the Cold War, and apparently it's all like this weird, crazy ploy about how the Cuban Missile Crisis was just a diversion, and instead there's this much bigger threat behind the scenes where Soviet would-be President Khrushchev is trying to take control from President Brezhnev using this like elite paramilitary force, which turn out to be the bosses of the game. So Snake is sent in to kind of quell this threat, and there's also this thing called the Shago, the Shagohod, that's this big kind of precursor to the Metal Gears and is going to threaten the free world, so you got to fix all that. Like any MGS game, MGS3 seems to have a pretty cool cast of just really wild characters in there. But one really cool thing is you get to meet the young Revolver Ocelot, and you sort of have this nice moment where Snake turns him into who he later becomes, because he's using a different kind of gun at first, and Snake kind of recommends that maybe he try a revolver on for size, and later you fight him in this Wild West style shootout. And then you later take on another really weird character who's called the Pain, and he commands swarms of angry hornets at you, because no MGS game has yet had a man who throws hornets at you, so here you go. And he is sort of par for the course for what's yet to come. Of course, once again, it seems like the boss battles are going to be a real highlight of the gameplay here. Of course, things go wrong, things get crazy. The game is full-on crazy, much like Metal Gear Solid 2 was. It starts blowing your mind right from the very beginning. It's got some really kind of nasty and delightful self-referential jokes right from the early going that seem directly targeted at Metal Gear fans. In fact, the whole game seems really sort of insidery. It's really geared toward MGS fans, or that's my impression. So I think fans are going to be in for a treat when they play this game, but if you're expecting for the series to have greatly evolved, then you're not going to experience that from this game. With that said, I've only played through the early portions so far, so it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and we'll all find out soon enough when we come back with our full reviews very soon.